Grow, Sell, and Retire is the podcast for the lazy overachiever. BD Dalton, author of The Assisted Purchase, True Gravity, and Grow, Sell, and Retire, is here to give his 25 years of secrets, tips, and assistance to take your business to the next level. This podcast is for anyone who wants to sell more, work less, and make better business. Now, here's your host, BD, with today's GSR podcast.
Hey everybody, BD Dalton here, Growth, Sell, and Retire podcast. Today we're going to have a great interview and learn a lot of tips and tricks from Allison Kluger. Allison, tell us a little bit about you, where you come from, what you're doing now, and some of the things we're going to talk about today.
Okay, BD, thanks so much for having me here. It's an honor. I'm a native New Yorker. Grew up in Manhattan, and I went to University of Pennsylvania. Why I say that is I thought I'd go to Wharton and be a businesswoman until I figured out that my brain doesn't work that way. I'm completely a creative in many ways. And through my college years, I had my own TV show, Penn PM. I interned at KYW News and radio stations. And I graduated and started working at Good Morning America 3 days after I graduated.
Wow.
And yeah, I had interned there the summer of my junior year. And I remember saying to myself, there are 50 interns. I'm going to be the one they remember. And how I did that was I just showed up 2 hours early every day for the live show. I got to know everybody in the studio, all the crew, all the green room people. And then I'd do my full day. And then I'd say, hey, can I go on a shoot? Or can I sit in the editing bay at night? To me, it was a free education that I was going to take advantage of. And after the summer, I came in my senior year and I would fill in for vacation relief when I had vacations. And I just put all my eggs in one basket, BD. I was just like, this is where I'm going to work. And I did.
That is very cool. So when you're looking at that, and you just went through a really good thing, and you talk to people about storytelling. You talk to people about telling their story without, I guess, probably over-embellishing in them, but taking people on a journey. So kind of walk through some tips and tricks, I think, and some of the stuff you teach and work with in your classes and with the people that you coach.
I will. Well, storytelling to me is key, and everything in my life has been foundational. What I love about it, BD, is that no one can tell your story. And when you tell a good story, what you're doing is you're leveraging your life experiences, whether they're good or bad, failures, triumphs, or just something quirky. And you're showing people what you're made of, what your core skills are. I always say, like, if you're an Olympic swimmer, and because I have students who are Olympic athletes at Stanford, what I inherently know is that they got up early every morning at 5 a.m., that they're disciplined, that they take care of their bodies, that they missed out on a lot of school events, that they're goal-oriented, that they're a team player, but they're also a solo practitioner. And so already I get a sense of who they are, even if they just tell me of a story of a race they may have lost. So storytelling, to me, is how you differentiate yourself and make yourself memorable, but also where you allow yourself to be authentic. Because when you're interviewing for a job or meeting new people, we all ask the same questions. What do you do? What's hard for you? What do you wish you could do differently? And this is an opportunity to show your texture and show your layers.
And so you deal with a lot of educated people, and you've also built Good Morning America. You've done all these different things. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people use a lot of big words when they're telling stories or things. So when you're helping people tell their story, but so that it's absorbable by somebody else, how do you pitch the level of the audience, or how do you understand if you're trying to create a good generic story that everybody will absorb and feel without using big words or ideas that are over the top?
Honestly, that is such a great question. And I'm so glad you asked it, because something I teach at the business school is strategic communication. And the first framework we start with is audience, intent, and message. Every audience is different. So if you're going to be in an audience with everyone who's exactly like you are, let's say that everyone's an engineer and you're an engineer and you're talking about a new product, well, then you can use acronyms, you can use shorthand. You don't have to be as emotional or entertaining. You're going to get to the point. But let's say your audience is very different from you. So you have to understand more than anything before you craft your message or even what the goal is to understand what they want from you. So I always say, it's not what you want to say, it's what your audience needs to hear. We know so much. You could talk so much about podcasting and entrepreneurship and companies and ideas, everything that you know. But is your audience ready to hear all that? Is that what they want to hear? So that's my first credo, is audience intent and message. Intent is, what is your goal? What do you want people to think or do, or take some sort of action, right, as a result of this communication?
Mm-hmm.
The message, what do you want them to remember? If you overload people with too many facts, they won't know what to stick on to. So when you saturate people and keep going on and go in the weeds, they're kind of searching. Like, what is the most important thing I'm supposed to take away?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone leaves a communication meeting, something lecture from you, and they can't repeat the main points, then you probably haven't succeeded.
So do you think that people in their messaging try to be everything to everybody too many times?
I do.
Not everybody, but in general, when people are marketing, when people are LinkedIning, whatever they're doing, do you think that they try to cover too many bases instead of trying to really kind of hone in or aim in on people?
Well, I think it's kind of a slippery slope, because if you're marketing on social media, you're trying to be as mainstream as possible and appeal to everybody. But what I always say is, if you know you're only going to appeal to a niche, or you're afraid of offending someone, I say front load it. So when I speak in front of a lot of different types of people, I might start off and say, I'm going to talk about this. Now, I know you engineers, this is something you already know really well, but I want to make sure everybody's at the same level. So what I'll do is I'll understand my audience and acknowledge the people who maybe already know it, or who might find it confusing, or who might find it objectionable. Anticipation is a very big part of how I believe in messaging and creating narratives.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started teaching at Stanford Business School, the courses that I teach and created are reputation management, strategic pivoting for your next chapter, personal branding, executive presence, and then strategic communication, which I was invited to teach. But I created my own electives, media training, and executive presence for women. So the whole thing is, how do you make no one feel left behind? If someone feels frustrated or distracted when I'm talking, that's on me. So this is what I tell people. If you speak too fast and someone stops and goes, what did she mean by that? And you're going on, they've already missed the next minute or two of what you're saying. So it's up to you to clarify along the way. Your goal is to make sure everyone's with you. Because if you piss off one person or you frustrate one person, they're going to leave and think, I never want to hear that person talk again. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. So you went through a lot of your course stuff and the things that you've created and all that. And I think one of them kind of resonates because really with executive presence. So walking into a boardroom and you have a lot of stuff that's female focused, and especially in today's world where there's not enough female CEOs, female leaders. There's leaders, but maybe not sitting on the board in the right position. So how do you get past that if you're the outsider? It might not be a gender issue. It might be a race issue or an age issue or things like that. So how do you create executive presence? Just maybe walking into the room, maybe a communication style or observing. So maybe a couple of pointers that we can take away and say, I can apply this today.
Absolutely. And executive presence really is genderless. But women do struggle more. So that's why I teach specifically one class on executive presence for women, but I speak on executive presence in general. So believe it or not, BD, there are three elements that define executive presence, and it's appearance, it's your communication skill, and it's gravitas. Appearance doesn't mean you're a supermodel or that you're dressed, in the most expensive clothes. What it really means is, are you dressed for power? Are you dressed appropriately? Because people take you in a thin sliver immediately. What they look at you as, what is your age, your ethnic background, your gender, and then it's how you stand and your posture, how you talk and speak, the rate, and the warmth or the firmness. Your eye contact, is it hostile, warm, or is it averted? And then I think in your clothing, I think I already said that. So people just take this in not because they're trying to stereotype you, they're just trying to solve you. Once they kind of know where to put you and get that all out of their head, they can listen. And, we all do first impressions. For me, I say first impressions are, how warm do you look? How firm is your handshake? Do you smell good? Do your clothes look nice? Am I attracted to you? Do you speak in a way I understand? There's so much stimulus coming at you. So when I say appearance, think about something that looks powerful, confident, and probably a little neutral, unless you have a brand that you need to continue, like Michael Moore, he's that director who shows up in a baseball cap and sloppy clothes. That's his brand, right? Snoop Dogg, he has his own brand. Doesn't matter where he goes, the Olympics or whatever, he's going to look exactly the same way. Okay, so that's the appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Next is communication skills. And this is why I say that if you have a great idea or a great product or a great platform, but you can't communicate it well to someone, you're going to stand in the corner with a great idea, a great product, or a great platform. Your ability to speak with, like you said, plain English, not big words, synthesize your story and not go into the weeds or go, oh, wait a minute, I mean this, or adding a lot of technical jargon. Then if you can carry that idea to someone, they can carry it to someone else. But if they can't repeat your thought or your idea cohesively, then you're missing out on an opportunity. And so executive presence is knowing how to tell your story, kind of like an elevator pitch, knowing just what needs to be said, and then stopping and allowing them to ask more questions, or saying, I'm going to give you the high points. Let me know if you need me to explain, or let me know if you want me to elaborate. Okay, so that's the second. And the third is gravitas, and it's all learned. Gravitas is just making people feel like you have control and that you're taking care of them. So even if someone came up to me and said, Allison, I don't know, what can I do? And I'll say, you know what? I'm actually not the person who can help you with this, but I'm going to find that person for you. Stay with me for a second, right? Or calm down, take a breath. I really understand why that's upsetting you. Let's break it down for a moment. There's always a solution. It's kind of like parenting.
Yeah.
Like you have to be, and even if your head is crazy and you're afraid and you feel like an imposter, how are you making the other person feel? So gravitas is a lot of being present in the moment, like being grounded and making people feel like, I know this person's going to help me figure something out. That's what executive presence is.
Very good. So when you're looking at the gravitas, I mean, you kind of have to kind of build yourself into practice it, almost like doing press ups or doing things like that. You have to practice it to know you're calm. So when you're looking at the presence, or when you're looking at your image or how you're carrying yourself, and you're going into new situations, how do you research? So if you're coming to pitch to a bunch of financial advisors or people that aren't in suits, or you're going to Silicon Valley, how do you figure out what's that one level of good, well dressed without being overly dressed? You don't want to show up in a tuxedo or an evening gown. So how do you gauge that when you're going into situations?
First of all, being part of Silicon Valley here, I mean, I'm a New Yorker, so I used to dress up in black all the time before I moved here. It's much more casual here. But again, it's knowing your audience. If I were to go to New York for a meeting, I'd probably dress up a little more. I think everyone has to do research, and we all have all these tools. We have LinkedIn, we have websites, we have people we can ask. But also before you go meeting, say, hey, what's the dress code? Even with that, I tell my students, I tell my clients, I would dress up a half a step more because it signals self-respect, that you're taking this seriously, and it signals power. And I said, the worst thing that can happen is someone will go, wow, you're really dressed up. We don't dress up that much here. And you go, I dressed up for you today, but duly noted, next time I'll show up a little more casual. This is an anecdote that's true, but I think it really helps explain. A friend of mine in education who taught with me, at Stanford. He went to an education conference. There were about 100 people there. And out of all the people, 3 of them were wearing suits. Everyone else was pretty casual.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone gravitated towards the 3 people in the suits, thinking that they were the leaders. They weren't. They just happened to show up in suits. So these are all cues. It doesn't mean you have to wear a suit, but it means it can be used as a tool. It's like if a doctor doesn't wear a white coat,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to trust it's a doctor, right? The white coat is a signal
Mm-hmm.
that, this is the job I do and you can trust me.
Things like that. So the symbols and that if button-down shirt versus polo shirt, like I'm wearing today, changes just that one level above, and so it makes that good. So your overall, we were just talking about that reputation management. I think that we have some big things happening. And when I was in the States this last time, there's some reputations in politics right now being handled in multiple situations. And this isn't a political thing, but there's a lot of reputation management being happening right now. So when we're looking at this on a small level, we're not doing it from a Elon Musk X level. Yeah. When we're looking at our own reputation management, both from a good and bringing it back from bad, what are some pointers that you can have? So on the good side, amplifying it, and on the bringing it back from the bad side, it would be great if you could come or give us some of the things that you teach and work with your students on.
Oh, BD, I am so passionate about reputation management.
Awesome.
I'm going to try to synthesize for you and know my audience. But for me, the question that we all have to really consider, no matter what our arena is, are you coming off and landing on others the way you think you are? Mm-hmm. You may think, I'm a bon vivant and I'm fun and I know what I'm doing. While other people might say, this person's a blowhard. They're narcissistic. They won't shut up. So it's like, that's the negative side.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is are you aware of how you're landing? And so there are some guidelines that I really believe in. And one is Daniel Diermeier's Trust Radar. And it's from a book he wrote called Reputation Rules. And what he basically says is there are 4 ways to have a good reputation and also to resolve a reputation issue. And the 4 axes are: first, empathy. The second one is transparency. The third one is expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And the 4th one is commitment. So let me break this down, because reputation has everything to do with trust.
Yes.
And it also has everything to do with connection. People will be willing to listen to you if they trust you and even like you. Even if they don't agree, they'll respect you and you can have a really nice. But what you don't want to do is come and club people over the head with what you feel, what you think, because they're going to draw into themselves and get defensive. So I always teach the Tylenol case. Do you know the Tylenol case from 1982?
I remember it in the headlines, and I was there. But
yeah, we were born.
Yes, I was around.
We were around. We were like fetuses, but we were around. Basically, in Chicago, someone poisoned some bottles of Tylenol on the shelves, and they put cyanide capsules in. I think there were about 8 deaths. Mm-hmm. Johnson & Johnson was the mother company of it. And instead of blaming this random serial killer, they first empathized. They said, this is the most terrible thing for anyone who's been harmed. We're going to do everything in our power to help you. This should never happen, especially with our products. Then they took every single bottle of Tylenol off the shelves nationwide without any thought to cost. Mm-hmm. And they followed up on it. And then so the transparency was, we don't know how it happened, but we're going to figure it out and let you know. And then they had expertise. What do we do to fix this? Well, because of this event, they created the tamper-proof bottle top, which now everybody uses. Mm-hmm. It took them a while. But the point was, our experts are going to figure out a way that no one can ever tamper with our bottles. And then finally, there's commitment, which is seeing it through, and making sure that the action has changed. So I always tell people that these are the 4 tenets or axes of a good reputation, but it's also a way to help yourself if you're in a bad situation, is empathizing with whoever feels like they're the hurt party or who has a question or who's skeptical and say, I can see why you think that. It doesn't have to be such a big thing. It's like if someone's talking to you, you just say, tell me how you feel. Tell me why you feel. Oh, I understand that. And then, well, let me tell you why I feel the way I do. That's the transparency. Expertise is, well, this is where I learned this. Tell me where you learned. Like, let's talk about that. And then commitment is, you know what? I may not agree with you, but you really made me think about it. And I'm going to be more thoughtful as I move forward. So it can apply in a lot of different ways.
So in that, so you said Daniel's the trust radar stuff. So when somebody works on that, how can you, because we all have blinders as to, or rose tinted glasses as to how we're being taken in a room or how we're landing. So how do we really get an evaluation of that? How do you do a 360 or how can you really get that opinion where people are going to tell you the truth? Because I live in the UK and people tell you, if you have a bad meal, and you lived here too, and Lynn, if you have a bad meal and you're having a bad meal and the waitress or waiter comes over and says, how are you doing? You go, oh, it's fine, thanks. They'll just, it's like, how do you get away from not good feedback, or how do you find good feedback?
I'm going to give you a very recent example that's very small but pointed. I truly believe, BD, you can say anything to anybody if you do it with kindness and respect. But if you don't say how you're feeling and you let the resentment build on either side, it just foments and blows up and it becomes worse. Mm-hmm. And so my great skill in life is really knowing how to communicate well with people and making sure they feel better for having been with me. That's my hope. I hope that's what happens. But here's a really silly example. I was with my family on the East Coast and I went to a Starbucks and I ordered this drink. And I'm not kidding when I say it came with 3/4, if not more, of ice cubes. And it had like 5 sips of the liquid. And it's a little vacation town where I'm sure they're trying to make money. And I was with my son. I'm like, oh my God, like there was nothing in here. And he's like, Mom, don't say anything. I'm like, it was $8. And I said, sweetie, you know what? If they don't know, they're going to keep doing it. I've got to say something. I'm like, you go, I'm not coming with you. Yes. So I go back and I find the manager who happened to be the one who made me the drink. And I said, I hope you don't mind my sharing this with you, but this drink, if you look at it, it was all ice. And I got 5 sips. And she just immediately was like, oh my God, I'll remake it. I said, I really want to thank you. I said, I just think it's frustrating. I said, it's delicious. It's expensive. And I think there's just a lot of ice in there. And I think that you're going to have some really dissatisfied customers. And she's like, no problem. And she did. And I said to her, thank you so much for your willingness to help me out. I really appreciate it. This is why I love Starbucks. Now, it's a small little thing, but I did think about how am I going to approach this and not make this person feel ashamed or the villain, right? Or wrong. Because nobody wants to feel that way.
And she and she wasn't going to make any more money or any less money on her shift because she gave you more ice cubes than liquid.
Not at all. And I bet you after that, she's going to be more cognizant of like not putting so much ice in because she's not going to want to have another person come up and complain and maybe not do it as nicely. But have you ever heard of Kim Scott's Radical Candor?
I know it. I've listened to the book on Blinkist, but I haven't actually read it myself.
Yeah. So no worries. I mean, just a lot of people know, but her quadrant, her belief is also like challenge directly and care deeply. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the upper right-hand quadrant, as you know, a lot of business people like those 4 quadrants. And she's like, if you challenge someone and you don't care, you're just an obnoxious a-hole. Mm-hmm. Right? If you challenge and you care, if you care too much and don't challenge, then you're just enabling them for bad behavior. So I can't visualize the quadrant right now. But the most important thing is if you don't tell people what they're doing right or what they're doing wrong, then you're letting them hang themselves, especially as a leader. So, for me, why I've been told I've fired people so nicely, like they're still my friends. Because and also I don't just fire people, I give them warnings. But, if I'm seeing somebody's not doing something great, I'm going to go and I'm going to say, look, you are so good at this, but I wouldn't be a good boss and a good leader if I didn't tell you that this isn't working as well. Tell me what's going on. Are you struggling with this? Can I help you? Because your reputation right now is that you're not working that hard. And I feel like you actually are, but maybe there's a blocker or an obstacle. That's how I engage in a difficult conversation, to allow them to speak their truth, to not feel ashamed, and then to want to do better.
That really brings, you're empowering people if you do, or you might be empowering them because they don't actually want to be there. So you're helping them make a decision. And I think in that, the other one that I loved, and because you've had everything else, is strategic pivoting. So you've come to me and you said, BD, you can't do this, and I've said, Allison, you are actually right. You're helping me pivot. So let's talk about let's strategically pivot and look at how you kind of walk people through that, because things are changing. COVID's changed people. People have changed business. Work from home's changed. All this type of stuff. So how do you talk to people about strategic pivoting?
Well, I think because I went through it myself, I was really able to understand. So after television, I did, as you know, Good Morning America. Mm-hmm. I was a home shopping host. I produced a network of home shopping and created 17 hours of live TV and ran it and created shows. I was one of the startup producers for ABC's The View. I moved to California. I did a .com startup. We were a .com disaster. I went to interactive television, Open TV. Yep. I worked with Al Gore for a year on starting up the current TV network, and I worked for MSNBC. Mm-hmm. And then I pivoted to parenting, which for me was the hardest job of my life because I've been working since I'm 16. I started up my own consulting firm, so I would work a little bit, but for the most part, I had 2 boys back to back, and I was, my husband is an entrepreneur as well, and we were just by ourselves out here in California. Mm-hmm. A year before I knew both my kids were going to be in kindergarten and first grade, I had to think about pivoting. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love television and media, and I'm really knowledgeable about pop culture, if you want to have coffee with me, I realized I needed something. And this is what I tell people. I'm like, whatever you're going to pivot to has a few reasons. One is maybe you want to matter more to the world. You want to have more of a sense of purpose, or it's a geography issue. You've got to move, or you don't feel satisfied with what you're doing anymore. You don't feel like that's honoring who you are, or you need to make more money, mm-hmm. right? And there's so many different reasons, but whatever your reason is, you have to do the same thing. You have to dig down and say, what are my core, what's my core currency? What is a given? And so no matter what I've done in my life, all those jobs, I'm a great communicator. I coach people. I'm multifaceted in media and taking action. I'm a problem solver. Mm-hmm. I'm a great orator. I speak publicly, and I'm very easy to get along with. Like I'm a glass half full. And I thought about teaching because I've taught in different ways. And I'm like, I'm going to teach at Stanford Business School. That's where my husband went. And so I created a course called Reputation Management. And it's a longer story, so I'm not going to go into it, but I convinced a wonderful professor, J.D. Schramm, to take me under his wing, and we taught it together. And from that, he invited me to teach strategic communication with him. Mm-hmm. From that, I created my own electives on executive presence for women and media training. And then I created 2 of my own courses. One was personal branding, which I taught with Tyra Banks, the supermodel businesswoman. Nice. And the other is strategic pivoting for your next chapter with A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, because mm-hmm. he had to pivot from being a baseball icon to a commentator, a real estate investor, philanthropist, all of that. But what I did is I used all my core competencies. I just repackaged them. And so usually whatever you're pivoting to, BD, is peripheral to what it is you already do well. You just have to change the narrative, and then you take your past experiences as proof points. So if you're a swimmer and you're going to something else, that might seem like a big leap. But if you say, I'm the most disciplined person you're ever going to meet. I woke up at 5 a.m. every morning. I'm okay working long hours. I'm okay feeling uncomfortable for the greater good. I won't give up till I win. Now, if this person wants to be a coder, right, or a VC, that personality to me is going to make me give them a chance, even if they haven't done it, because I know the kind of person they are. Mm-hmm. So that's how you can flex using reputation, communication, and your past experience to create a new narrative of pivoting. Be clear why you want to pivot. Be clear what your nest egg is. And a lot of us don't want to pivot for a very common reason. There's no guarantee of success. Like, what if I'm making a lot of money doing this? Maybe I'm a consultant at Deloitte or Bain, but I really want to go into creating apps, right? Mm-hmm. There's no guarantee. This is what I say. Like, what kind of person are you? When you have to work hard, do you dig in? Do you ask questions? Do you research? Do you take courses? Can you shadow? Are you the kind of person that's going to put your nose to the grindstone? That's the guarantee. Bet on yourself, because there is no guarantee. But was there something in your life you wanted really badly and you worked really hard for it and got it? That's the you that you bet on.
That's awesome. So where can we find out more about you? I mean, because not everybody can come over to Stanford and take classes and do everything else. So where can we find out more about you and kind of follow some of the things or reach out to you if they want to know a little bit more?
You're so sweet. Well, I guess the best way is just through my website, which is pretty simple, which is www.allisonkluger.com. And I have a couple of videos and articles. I really have to update it, BD. I'm very bad. And if you Google me, there are a bunch of articles on executive presence and everything. But, you can reach me and I'm always happy to answer a question or be helpful. Sadly, my courses are just for students, but I do workshops and seminars when people hire me. And I just love what I do. I love people and connection, and I love talking to you.
Perfect. So the very last thing that we always do on Grow, Sell, and Retire, we do the rewind. So the rewind is give us, if somebody listened to the last minute or this last little nugget that you're going to leave, and it could be something you've already said, it's how do we get them to rewind? So if they just listened to the last minute of Allison Kluger on Grow, Sell, and Retire, what's your number one top tip to get them to go back and listen to the last half an hour?
Love that. My top tip is present the solution, not the suggestion. I think we're full of a world of people who identify problems and they're like, excuse me, this isn't working. And they think they're going to get a brownie point for that. But really what they're doing is they're taking a big smelly egg, they're dumping it in someone else's lap. So what I say is identify what's wrong and say, excuse me, this isn't working. This is my idea. I think we need to hire these people. We get the budget from here. This would be our timeline, and I want to be in charge. And all of a sudden now you're the hero. You're not the zero. But nobody wants to hear a complainer. They want to see someone who has executive presence, who has a reputation for betting on themselves, who can communicate their ideas clearly. And what I love about present the solution, not the suggestion, is you can take your time. Like, figure it out yourself. How would you envision filling this void or solving this problem that's annoying everybody? But give the whole vision, right? Anticipate the pushback ahead of time. Why will people be skeptical? Why will they say no? Why will they embrace it? Or, why will they be confused? And then address that all in your presentation. And people will feel seen and heard and inspired.
Allison, that was awesome. That was almost a podcast in itself. So thank you very much, Allison, for coming on the Grow, Sell, and Retire podcast. It's been amazing having you on.
Thank you so much. I love talking to you. It was an honor.
Thanks for joining us on Grow, Sell, and Retire. For more information, tools, or to book one of our team members to work with your team, business, or to speak at your event or conference, visit rockfind.co.uk. If you like the podcast, you'll love one of BD's 3 books: The Assisted Purchase, True Gravity, and the book the podcast is based on, Grow, Sell, and Retire. If you want to work for the rest of your life, that is your business. If you don't, that is ours.